Hi guys, Bran here. Today we're going to be answering the all-important question of how much luck and how much skill is involved in Dead by Daylight. This is something a lot of people debate a lot. A lot of people think that, you can only be skillful as a killer through thousands and thousands of hours. Other people think it's a borderline party game where, it doesn't matter how much you try it. In all of it's just kind of for fun and it doesn't matter. So we're going to try to decipher what it actually is based on this wonderful chart here I've made of high skill, low skill, etc. And we're going to be using examples and community input to get a final answer of where does DBD lie on this wonderful chart of ours. So without further ado, let's get to it. A high-skill low-luck game is what would be ideally categorized as a competitive game, something that has tournaments, something that is very intense, because everything should be based off of the high skill. The skill should be the most important factor, player versus player, the amount of hours or natural intelligence and instincts they have with the game should be most prevalent, and luck should be either non-existent at all or a very, 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 very low amount. What's a good example of this? A good example of this would be Tekken 7, or really most fighting games. Most fighting games are like this to some extent or the other. Very, very, very intense and hard to learn inputs, very, very hard to execute combos, having to have an extensive knowledge of each of the characters to try and counter them, knowing which moves are bad, knowing which moves are good. Luck really isn't a factor in most fighting games, most competitive fighting games. The stages, while they may be, visually different, all the stages are a flat plane or a 3D plane where these things where things don't change too much. Essentially, everything is static as much as it can be. That way, it's player versus player, and whoever is the best man wins. And there's no interaction of a random power or something. As a matter of fact, fighting games that do have mechanics like that are the ones that people don't seem to like as much. So yeah, fighting games are a good example like Tekken 7. Another good example of this are MOBAs like Dota 2. So essentially the map is the same every time. There's a lot of meticulous skill that you have to show. Am I leveling up my character right? Am I choosing the right abilities to level up? Am I buying the right items? Am I using the right items effectively? Am I being a good teammate? Am I knowing to switch lanes at the right time? Do I know which towers to defend at what times? When's a good time to jungle and what's not a good time to jungle? There's a lot that goes into Dota 2 and MOBAs in general. Essentially, there's just so much that you have to master and do correctly. And if you're off by even a second when it comes to your efficiency in MOBAs, it could cost your team the whole game. So it's very, very much a high skill thing, but there's also no real luck components at all either, unless you have a weird hero or champion that kind of does something odd like that. But even those are super rare. So essentially it is all about the competition. All right, so let's move over to the high skill, high luck quadrant. Now this one seems a little bit weird because how can something be high skill and high luck? If you want high skill, typically you're looking at a player versus player, best man wins sort of scenario. But with high luck, that kind of interferes. These don't seem to go together, right? Because this is uncertainty. High luck is uncertainty. That means that even the best man can do everything he can, and he could still possibly lose just because he gets screwed by some sort of RNG factor. What are a perfect example for this? Card games, like Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic. Now, it's trust me, I did Yu-Gi-Oh! I know I don't mention this too much, but my first competitive one was Yu-Gi-Oh! And I don't bring that up too much because I did not enjoy that time too much, but I remember going to card shops and buying and going to tournaments and stuff. Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic and most TCGs as a result are very, very high skill because you have to pick the right cards, you have to have good synergy between your cards, and you got to have the least amount of useless cards as possible in your deck. Everything has to have a use, and you have to pick basically cards that no matter when you draw them, it's usually not a bad circumstance to have them, if that makes sense. Because here's where the luck situation comes in. Here's where the high luck scenario comes in. If you are relying on a certain set of cards or a certain play of combo to go through to carry your deck, they could just through shuffling end up all at the bottom. They could just end up all at the bottom or in a very, very bad order for you. And essentially, when this happens, even doesn't matter how good of a player you are, if you just aren't getting the cards that help you win, because that's what your deck is designed to do, you're going to lose. As a matter of fact, this is why deck building is kind of the true skill of most trading card games, because building a deck where you can end up in the least amount of useless card situations possible is kind of the real skill of TCGs. And I've been out of them for 10 years, so you can, if those of you who have more experience can correct me, but I remember when I played, When I played, it was all about building a deck that was useful no matter what cards you were drawing, and had very, 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 very few, if at all, useless cards that you could draw at any point. Because what happens a lot is people won't draw the right cards at the right time, and that's what they lose. And that's like the most common, John, when you lose is, oh, well, I just didn't draw this card at a certain time, you would have been destroyed. But that's the name of the game. Literally, it's random which cards you pull. They can't, you have complete control over the deck that you build, but the order in which you draw them is completely random, and depending on when that happens, you could literally win the whole match in like 2 turns, or you lose in 2 turns, and it's very scary. So I think competitive card games and TCGs are high luck and high skill. I think that's a good example. Okay, let's go down to the high luck, low skill quadrant, or I like to call it the party game quadrant. This is what it actually, I think this is what actually qualifies as a party game, because low skill means that you're kind of just there. You could win arbitrarily. It could be like maybe a tiny bit of your input, but largely you're not doing much. And it's all based on high luck and the randomness factor, and everybody freaking out at the randomness factor. So what would classify good as a party game? I think that most party games would be like classic board games like Sorry or Candyland. Sorry and Candyland, if you haven't played them in a while, the entire premise of the game is drawing a card, and everything you do is based off whatever card you draw from the deck. So you may be moving 5, you may be moving 1, it just is entirely based on which card you pull. Sorry especially has these situations where you can literally attack and remove other players' pawns from the game, but that's still entirely based on what the random card you drew tells you to do. There's not really any input from you on what to do. It just depends. You just do whatever card you drew tells you to do. There's no input there, but that could be either really lucky or really unlucky, depending on where you are in the game and where you want to be. So Candyland is the same way. You just draw cards, and it has the colors on them, and you move to those colors. Sometimes you move 2 colors. It's completely random. It's just entirely based on what you draw. So when somebody like wins Sorry or wins Candyland, it doesn't really mean a whole lot, because like it's all random anyway. You didn't do anything. You just listened to what the card told you to do. You just happened to get lucky with the cards. That's it. That's just party games, and that's how party games work. Okay, so let's go to this quadrant. Was kind of hard for me to find or think of examples of, but I think I found something. So like low skill and low luck. So low skill, like this one's more of the sense of like, yeah, there's some input from you, but largely the task you were trying to accomplish is not very difficult. And low luck means like, unlike these games over here, these games have a very, very static board or setup that doesn't really change ever, if at all, and it's entirely based on a really, really simple task that's hard to like get RNG with. I think a good example of this would be like checkers. Checkers, the board never changes. The simplest decisions you have to make is just, do I step over this one, or do I step over that one? Or can I step over more than once? Which I would consider low skill, because that's like not that hard. Another one would be Connect 4. Connect 4 is another game like that. All you have to do is Connect 4. Is there skill involved? Yeah, sometimes, you want to take the middle one, and if you're not paying attention close enough, you may miss the opportunity to Connect 4. But otherwise, the board is static. The board's the same every single time, and connecting 4 isn't really a big skill. So despite the game being fun, there's not a lot of skill involved, but there's not really any luck involved. It's just kind of like rudimentally you're paying attention to a very static board that never changes. So yeah. So now we get to Dead by Daylight. Dead by Daylight. Where does Dead by Daylight fit in? If we look at the examples that we have so far, oh God. If we look at the examples we have so far, let's scooch you in. Look at the examples that we have so far. Which one does Dead by Daylight really fit into? Because most people, I will say, some people will cheekily try to put it down here, but it's usually in these 3. It's usually within these 3 that people try to put it. It's either high skill, low luck, high skill, high luck, or high luck, low skill. Is it a party game? Is it like a TCG where it's kind of high skill, high luck? Or is it an actual competitive game with high skill and very, very low luck? So what did the community think? At a 60% voted rate, at a 60 percentile, people said that Dead by Daylight is a high skill and high luck game. why is Dead by Daylight considered to be a high skill, high luck game? Why is it actually akin? Why is Dead by Daylight more akin to a TCG, to a card game, more than it is a competitive game? So let's take that analogy and let's think about it. So high skill. So if you're playing Killer, there's a lot of stuff you got to learn. And in playing Survivor, there's a lot of stuff you got to learn. Ending chases quickly is an important skill that you can't just do by picking up the game. There's learning your character. So if you're playing Killer, learning somebody like Nurse, Hillbilly, Huntress, it's going to be a lot more difficult than playing a character like, say, Mookle Myers, which is relatively simple, right? Knowing how to pressure gens, knowing how to enforce or stop a 3-gen, knowing how to play certain tiles. There's a lot of stuff that goes into Dead by Daylight that is very skillful. It's not something you do if you just pick up the game. So there's a lot of skill involved. It is a high skill game, but it is also a very, very high luck game. So what are the high luck and more RNG aspects of this game? The maps themselves. If you get somewhere like Haddonfield versus, say, Shelter Woods, the game that you have as Killer is going to be dynamically different. One is a lot easier than the other one, and that's just because of the random map that you got. It's not like fighting games where all the maps are just kind of like reskins of a basic map that are almost exactly the same. It's just like the maps that spawn in Dead by Daylight are dynamically different and dynamically affect the gameplay. Even certain map spawns can be either stronger or weaker depending. You could get a map like Coal Tower, for example, is one of the most balanced maps in the game, but even Coal Tower can spawn like double pallets or triple pallets. I've seen ones which was terrifying. Like even Coal Tower, which is kind of regarded as the most balanced map, can even have a very, very bad spawn for Killer, or it could have, you know, a bunch of tire tracks and have a bunch of dead zones for survivors and suddenly be really Killer sided. So that definitely affects the game big time. And once again, trying not to be mean. But to be honest, there's a lot of high luck in this game because the game doesn't function the right way. A lot. Killer powers break. If a Killer power breaks mid-game, that's a big difference. That affects the rest of the game, right? Like if you're playing Nurse and suddenly you can't second blink and you get the blink bug, that's a problem. That means you're probably not going to do well in the rest of that game, right? Like a lot of this stuff. There's a lot of stuff that goes into this that can change the outcome of the game that has nothing to do with the players. Nothing to do with the players at all. And that kind of lines up with what, like, you know, card games are like. Because card games, you know, based on the way you built your deck and how you make the plays during the match, is kind of the way Dead by Daylight works. Like knowing your Killer before the match begins and having efficient and good chases and using your power effectively. That's the high skill of like a card game, right? But there's also high luck, whereas like, you know, the deck is randomly shuffled, and depending on what you draw, it may be good or bad. Just like, you know, the maps are randomly shuffled, and depending on what map you get, could be good or bad. There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff that lines up there. And I remember I was looking at these results, and I was like, really, Dead by Daylight's like more akin to like Magic than it is like actual competitive games like Dota. Like, really? But like the more you think about it, like it really does make sense, which I find very, very like unique and interesting. And I think in a weird way it makes me love the game more, because like I feel like a lot of the frustration that comes with people in this game is thinking it's over here, thinking it's here, thinking it's a high skill low luck game, and trying to feeling like you suck or you did something wrong or the other player sucks or is doing stuff wrong. And that is what causes a lot of frustration, because they think it's a low luck game. But if you think of it as just like, yeah, it's more like a card game where luck is just part of the game, but you gotta like be prepared still, suddenly everything makes sense. And I think it's really cool. Oh, and also people that try to put in a party game, do you really think Dead by Daylight has the same amount of like weirdness and lack of input as like Sorry or Candyland? Come on. It belongs up here. Come on. It belongs up here. Come on. Yeah, that's going to be it for this video. Tell me what you think in the comments below. Do you think this game is high skill, high luck, or do you think it belongs in another one of these quadrants? I thought this was really interesting. It definitely paints a better outlook for me with the game, so hopefully it's done that for you too. If you like this video, there's a way to actually like it down there, which would be really cool. And if you like my videos and you want to stick around a while, you can sub. So I would really appreciate that. Other than that, I will see you in the next YouTube video or on Twitch. And if I don't see you there, I'll see you when I see you, friends. Goodbye.